The notification on my phone screen didn't just ruin my holiday plans, it effectively erased 30 years of me trying to prove I was good enough to sit at their table. They thought uninviting me would make me invisible, but they forgot that I had the keys to a kingdom they could only dream of entering, and I wasn't about to spend the holidays alone. The rain in Portland doesn't wash things away. It just makes the grime slicker, harder to hold on to. I was standing in my office in the Pearl District, looking out at the gray wash of the city, feeling the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from closing a deal worth 8 figures. My startup, a logistics software company I'd bled for over the last 5 years, had officially been acquired. The wire transfer was sitting in an account my family knew nothing about. To them, I was just Jules, the one who spent too much time on her computer and not enough time finding a husband. I was the odd one out, the puzzle piece that had been jammed into the wrong box at birth. I turned away from the window, picking up my phone to check the time. I needed to leave soon to beat the I-5 traffic if I wanted to pick up the expensive artisan chocolates I'd ordered for Thanksgiving dinner. I'd gone all out this year. I'd bought personalized gifts for my nieces, a rare bottle of scotch for my dad, and I'd even offered to pay for the catering so my mom wouldn't have to cook. I wanted this year to be different. I wanted to walk in there, not as the black sheep, but as the golden goose. I wanted them to finally see me. That's when the group chat buzzed. My stomach did that familiar, cold flip it always did when I saw a notification from Family Connect. My thumb hovered over the screen. It was a message from Mom. Change of plans. Thanksgiving is now immediate family only. We're keeping it small. Don't come. I stared at the words. The blue bubble seemed to pulse, mocking me. Don't come. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Before I could even type a question mark, a second notification popped up below it. It was my sister, Marcy, a thumbs-up emoji, just a simple yellow thumb. It felt more violent than a slap across the face. I sat down heavily in my Herman Miller chair, the leather creaking in the silence of my empty office. My breath caught in my throat, a ragged, painful thing. I had already bought the plane ticket for my best friend to come visit the week after. I had cleared my schedule. I had bought the gifts. Immediate family, I whispered to the empty room. The irony was suffocating. I knew exactly who immediate family included. It included Marcy's boyfriend, a guy she'd been dating for exactly 3 weeks who wore his baseball cap backward at the dinner table. It included 2 cousins from Idaho I hadn't spoken to since I was 12. It definitely included my Uncle Jerry, the man who had once stolen a lawnmower from our garage and pawned it for beer money. They were all welcome. They were all immediate. But me? The daughter who sent money when the roof leaked? The sister who helped Marcy with her rent 3 times last year? I was the outlier. For a solid 10 minutes, I sat there, paralyzed by the childlike wonder of what did I do? I racked my brain for crimes. Had I forgotten a birthday? Had I said something political on Facebook? Then the memory of last Christmas hit me like a physical blow. They had forgotten to pick me up for Christmas Eve dinner. I had waited on my front porch for 2 hours in the cold until my dad called, laughing nervously, blaming traffic, saying it was too late to turn back now. Or the time I told Mom about my promotion to VP, and she waved her hand dismissively, saying it was just luck, before spending 20 minutes bragging about Marcy getting a part-time shift supervisor role at a retail chain. This wasn't an accident. This felt targeted. It felt personal. It was the final shove out of a lifeboat I had been swimming after for decades. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the corner of my office. I looked at myself, pale, successful, and utterly alone. The hurt began to curdle. It thickened, turning from a watery grief into a hot, dense anger. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to text back asking why. If they wanted small, if they wanted to curate their little world to exclude me, then fine. I looked out the window again toward the West Hills. Hidden in the trees of Forest Heights was the secret I hadn't told them yet, a $7 million mansion I had closed on 2 weeks ago. 7 bedrooms, a heated pool, a view of the entire valley, and a dining room that could seat 50. I had planned to announce it at dinner. I had planned to invite them all over for Christmas. I wanted to share my success with them. But now I had a massive empty house and a heart that was rapidly hardening into stone. I picked up my phone, but instead of replying to the group chat, I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance. Then I opened my contacts. I wasn't going to spend Thanksgiving crying into a microwave meal. If my biological family didn't want me, I would find a family that did. I would fill that mansion until the walls burst with noise and life. I would turn my exclusion into the most exclusive event of the season. The tears finally stopped. A cold, sharp smile touched my lips. They wanted me gone? Okay, I'd disappear from their table, but I was about to become the loudest thing in Portland. Have you ever poured your heart out to people who didn't deserve a single drop of your love? It hurts, doesn't it? It feels like you're screaming underwater. If you have ever felt left out, unappreciated, or cast aside by the people who were supposed to protect you, I need you to smash that like button right now. Do it for the underdog. Do it to show them that we don't need their permission to shine. Subscribe to the channel if you believe that true family is chosen, not born. And I want to know, comment below where you are watching from and tell me, what is the worst excuse someone has ever given you to cancel plans? Let's expose the toxicity together. The drive up to Forest Heights usually made me feel powerful. The winding roads, the towering fir trees, the glimpses of the city lights twinkling below like a spilled jewelry box. It was everything I had worked for. But today, the silence inside my Tesla felt heavy. I pulled up to the iron gates of my new home, punched in the code, and watched them swing open. The house stood there, a modern fortress of glass and timber, looking as lonely as I felt. I walked inside, my heels clicking, echoing against the hardwood floors of the foyer. The house was staged with furniture I'd bought with the place. Sleek, beige, impersonal. I dropped my keys on the quartz island in the kitchen, a space designed for parties I hadn't hosted yet. I imagined my family in their cramped dining room, Marcy probably making a show of setting out store-bought rolls while Mom cooed over her domestic skills. The thought made my throat tight. I pulled out my laptop and sat on a bar stool. I logged into my university alumni group first. Then I opened a local mutual aid page on Facebook I followed, and finally, a community Discord server for Portland creatives. I stared at the blinking cursor. What was the protocol for replacing your bloodline? I didn't overthink it, I just typed. If your family doesn't want you this Thanksgiving, mine didn't want me either. I have a house in Forest Heights with a view of the city and enough room for an army. I'm ordering food, lots of it. If you're alone, stranded, or just uninvited like me, come eat. No questions asked. DM for the address. I hit post on all 3 platforms. I expected maybe 5 people, maybe a couple of international students stuck on campus, or a neighbor who didn't want to cook. I poured myself a glass of water and waited. 3 minutes later, a notification pinged, then another. Then my laptop made a sound like a slot machine paying out a jackpot. Ping, 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 ping. I clicked on the first message. It was from a girl named Chloe. Is this real? My parents kicked me out last month when I came out. I've been sleeping in my car. I just want a warm meal. My heart cracked, but in a good way. The ice around it started to melt. I typed back, "It's real. Gate code is 1989. Come early." The next one was from an elderly man named Arthur. "My wife passed in July. I can't bear to sit in our kitchen alone. I can bring a green bean casserole." "Bring it, Arthur," I whispered, typing the reply. Within 2 hours, the RSVP list had blown past 50. By the time the sun began to set, casting long orange shadows across the empty great room, the count hit 300. Students stranded due to flight costs, single moms who couldn't afford a turkey, newly divorced dads, and people who, like me, just didn't fit into the perfect family mold. I sat there, watching the numbers climb, and for the first time all day, the crushing weight on my chest vanished. My family had tried to make me feel small. They wanted me to disappear. Instead, I was about to host the biggest event of my life. I wasn't just filling a house. I was building a sanctuary. I picked up the phone and dialed the number for the high-end catering company in Beaverton I used for corporate events. "Hi, this is Jules," I said, my voice steady and strong. "I need to change my order. I'm going to need enough for 300, and I need it by tomorrow." By Wednesday evening, my driveway looked less like a residential entrance and more like the loading dock of a convention center. 2 massive rental trucks were idling near the garage, unloading industrial portable heaters for the sprawling back deck. I had a team of 6 people setting up long, banquet-style tables in the great room, covering them with white linen that cost more than the couch in my old apartment. I was directing a florist on where to place the autumn centerpieces, pumpkins, eucalyptus, and dark red dahlias, when my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another caterer or a guest asking for directions. Instead, the name Aunt Karen flashed on the screen. My stomach tightened. Karen was my mom's younger sister, known in the family for 2 things: her tuna casserole and her inability to keep a secret. If news traveled in our family, it traveled on the Karen Express. I hesitated, then swiped answer. "Hello? Jules. Oh, thank God you picked up." Karen's voice was a hushed whisper, like she was hiding in a closet. "Look, I can't talk long. Your mother is in the kitchen making the stuffing, and if she hears me, she'll skin me alive." "Why are you calling, Karen?" I asked, walking out onto the deck for privacy. The cold November air bit at my cheeks. I couldn't sit here and listen to them anymore without telling you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Honey, they didn't uninvite you just because they wanted a small gathering. We both know your mother has never done anything small in her life." I leaned against the glass railing, looking out at the city lights. "Then why?" "It's Marcy," Karen whispered. "She told everyone, your mom, your dad, the cousins, that you were planning to hijack Thanksgiving to make some big announcement that would overshadow her engagement." I nearly dropped the phone. "Engagement? Marcy isn't engaged. She met that guy 3 weeks ago on Tinder." "Well, apparently he's proposing tomorrow before dinner," Karen said. "And Marcy convinced everyone that you were going to swoop in with some flash news about your job or money and make it all about you. She was crying, Jules. Real tears. Said she just wanted one day where she was the special one." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a lie. A calculated, manipulative lie. I hadn't planned any announcement. I was just going to eat turkey and give them gifts. "But that's not even the worst part," Karen continued, her voice dropping even lower. "I tried to defend you. I said Jules wouldn't do that. And your mother, she looked me dead in the eye and said, 'We can't risk her embarrassing the family again.'" Again. The word hung in the air, heavy and toxic, as if my existence, my success, my life was nothing more than a liability to their suburban image. "I see," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I just thought you should know," Karen said. "I love you, honey. I wish you were coming." "I'm glad I'm not," I said, and for the first time, I meant it. "Thanks, Aunt Karen." I hung up. The confusion I had felt yesterday was gone, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. They didn't just want me gone, they had villainized me to justify it. Marcy needed a monster to slay to make her 3-week relationship look like a fairy tale, and Mom was all too happy to hand her the sword. I turned back to the house. Inside, volunteers were laughing as they arranged chairs. The smell of baking pies was already drifting from the kitchen where the prep team was working. "Everything okay, Jules?" one of the caterers asked, noticing my expression. I smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut glass. "Everything is perfect. We're going to need more champagne." Thanksgiving morning usually started with the sound of my mother stress cleaning the kitchen and snapping at my dad to get out of her way. Today, however, I woke up to the smell of roasted garlic, sage, and the low, steady murmur of people working together. I walked down the floating staircase, my hand trailing along the cool glass railing. The transformation was breathtaking. The cold, modern mansion was now radiating warmth. The floor-to-ceiling windows, which usually framed the rainy grays of Portland, now reflected the golden glow of heat lamps and candlelight. The guests began arriving promptly at noon. It was a parade of the unwanted, a mosaic of castaways that didn't fit the picture-perfect holiday card. There were the college students from Reed and Lewis and Clark, looking grateful and hungry, piling their coats on the rack. There was Chloe, the girl who had been sleeping in her car, her eyes wide as she took in the spread of appetizers. I saw Arthur, the widower, meticulously arranging his green bean casserole on the buffet line next to a tray of truffle-infused deviled eggs, prepared by a professional chef. This is unbelievable," Arthur said, catching my arm as I walked by. His eyes were rimmed with red. "I thought I'd be watching Jeopardy reruns alone today." "Not today, Arthur," I smiled, squeezing his shoulder. "Today we feast." I moved through the crowd, pouring wine, shaking hands, and listening. That was the biggest difference between this and my family's dinners. At my parents' house, conversation was a minefield. You had to dodge questions about your weight, your salary, and your dating life. Here, people just wanted to connect. They talked about their art, their dogs, their favorite books. There was no pretense. No one was trying to impress anyone because we had all started from the same baseline. We had nowhere else to go. Near the fireplace, I noticed a quiet, older man standing alone, sipping a sparkling water. He wore a worn cardigan and had a kind, weathered face. He had RSVP'd via the Discord group simply as H. "Everything okay?" I asked, approaching him. "Can I get you anything?" He smiled gently, shaking his head. "I have everything I need, thank you. You have a lovely home, Jules, but the spirit inside it is even lovelier." "Thank you," I said, feeling a sudden lump in my throat. I just didn't want the house to be empty. "Houses are never empty when there is kindness," he said cryptically, then raised his glass in a small toast. By 4 p.m., the atmosphere was electric. We were 30 minutes away from serving the main course. I stood at the head of the great room, looking out at the sea of 300 people, strangers turned family for a night. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I didn't need Marcy's approval. I didn't need Mom's validation. I had built this. Then the intercom system on the wall buzzed, a harsh, jagged sound that cut through the jazz music playing on the speakers. I frowned. The caterers were all here. The guests had all arrived. I walked over to the security panel mounted near the kitchen and tapped the screen to pull up the live feed of the front gate. My breath hitched in my chest. There, standing in the rain outside my iron gates, was a cluster of people holding foil-covered dishes. My mother, my father, Marcy, her new boyfriend, the cousins. They were all there, and they looked furious. I stared at the black and white screen, the pixels vibrating with the force of my mother's rage. She was hammering the keypad with the heel of her hand. Behind her, Marcy was shielding her hair from the drizzle with a foil-covered platter, while my dad stood resignedly holding a cooler. "Jules!" Mom's voice crackled through the intercom speaker, distorted but unmistakably shrill. "I know you're in there. Open this gate right now. The street is full of cars. You are blocking the entire neighborhood." A hush had fallen over the nearest tables. A few guests exchanged worried glances. "Is everything all right?" Arthur asked, pausing with a forkful of stuffing halfway to his mouth. "It's fine," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. I smoothed the front of my dress. "Everyone, please, keep eating. I'll handle this." I signaled to the security guard I'd hired, a burly, soft-spoken guy named Marcus, who was standing near the entrance. "Marcus, come with me, but stay back unless they try to force their way in." "You got it, boss," he said, falling into step behind me. I walked out the front door and down the winding driveway. The rain had picked up, a cold mist that settled on my bare arms, but the adrenaline kept me warm. As I approached the tall iron gates, the scene became clearer. They looked like a Norman Rockwell painting that had been left out in a storm, soggy, miserable, and radiating entitlement. When they saw me, the shouting stopped for a split second, replaced by stunned silence. They were staring past me. They were staring at the house. I knew what they saw. The 3-story modern architectural marvel, the floor-to-ceiling glass revealing a party that looked like a scene from The Great Gatsby, the chandeliers, the waiters moving with trays of champagne. "What?" Marcy started, her voice small. Then her eyes snapped back to me and the jealousy ignited instantly. "Is this where you live?" "Open the gate, Jules," Mom snapped, recovering her composure. She didn't answer Marcy's question. She just pivoted to anger to mask her shock. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? We drove by to drop off some leftovers, out of the goodness of our hearts, and we can't even get down the street. There are cars parked on the lawn. Who are all these people?" "You came to drop off leftovers?" I asked, stopping 5 feet from the gate. The iron bars separated us, my world on one side, theirs on the other. "Or did you come to check if I was actually alone?" "We came to see family," Dad piped up, shifting the cooler, "and to see, well, whatever this is." "This," I said, gesturing behind me, "is Thanksgiving, the one you uninvited me from." "Don't be dramatic," Marcy spat, stepping forward. She pointed a manicured finger through the bars. "You did this on purpose. You knew we were keeping it small, so you threw some frat party to make us look bad." "It's not a frat party," I said. "It's a dinner for people who actually wanted to be together." "Well, let us in," Mom commanded, reaching for the handle again. "It's freezing out here and we have the yams. We're not going to stand in the rain while you play hostess to a bunch of strangers." I looked at them. The immediate family. The people who had chosen a boyfriend of 3 weeks over me. They expected the gate to open just because they demanded it. They expected me to fold like I always did. I didn't move. "No," I said. The silence that followed my refusal was heavy enough to crush the breath out of anyone, but I stood tall, the rain dampening my hair but not my resolve. "No?" my mother repeated, the word sounding foreign on her tongue, as if it were a language she refused to learn. "What do you mean, no? I am your mother. Open this gate immediately." "You made the rules, Mom," I said, leaning closer to the bars. "Immediate family only. You were very specific. You put a thumbs-up emoji on it." Marcy stepped up, shoving her boyfriend aside. Her face was twisted in a scowl that I used to fear, but now just looked childish. "Stop playing games, Jules. You're doing this because you're jealous. You knew he was going to propose tonight, and you couldn't stand not being the center of attention, so you threw this circus." "I didn't know until Aunt Karen called me yesterday," I corrected calmly. "But congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy." "You are ruining my night," Marcy shrieked, her voice cracking. "Look at this. My hair is frizzy, the food is getting cold, and you're standing there in is that a Gucci dress?" "It is," I said, "and it's dry, unlike you." My dad stepped forward, looking pained. "Jules, please, let's just go inside and talk. We're family. You can't leave us on the street." "You left me," I said, my voice dropping, losing its sarcasm. "You left me for 30 years. You left me last Christmas on a porch. You left me 3 days ago via text message. I'm just returning the favor." My mother's eyes narrowed. She grabbed the bars and shook them, a futile, desperate gesture. "I will not be humiliated like this. Open this gate or I will scream until every neighbor calls the police." Marcus, my security guard, took one heavy step forward. He didn't say a word. He just crossed his massive arms over his chest. My mother let go of the bars instantly, taking a stumbling step back. "Is everything okay out here?" The voice was soft, calm, and familiar. I turned to see the quiet older man, H, walking down the driveway under a large black umbrella. He stopped beside me, looking through the gate with mild concern. My mother, sensing a new target for her frustration, snapped her head toward him. "This is a private family matter. Who even are you? One of the strays she picked up off the internet?" The man smiled, unfazed by her venom. "I suppose you could say that. Jules was kind enough to offer a seat at her table when I had none." He looked at me, his eyes twinkling. "The soup is excellent, by the way." "We don't care about the soup," Mom yelled. "We are her real family. She belongs to us." "Does she?" The man's voice sharpened, just a fraction. "Because from where I'm standing, she seems to have built a much warmer family in there than the one standing out here." My mother scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, spare me the sermon, old man. I bet you're just happy for a free meal." "Mom," I warned, but it was too late. The man adjusted his glasses, peering closer at my mother. "Mrs. Bennett, isn't it? Patricia Bennett? From the Bennett Historical Preservation Society?" My mother froze. Her posture stiffened. "Yes. How do you know my organization?" "You've been emailing my office for 3 years asking for a grant," he said politely. "I'm Dr. Henley." The color drained from my mother's face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. "Dr. Henley?" she squeaked. "As in the Henley Foundation?" "The same," he said. He looked her up and down, taking in the soggy coat, the anger and the cruelty she had just displayed. "I must say, Patricia, your grant proposals always speak of community values and inclusivity. It's fascinating to see those values in practice." The silence on the street was total. Even the rain seemed to pause. Marcy looked between Mom and Dr. Henley, realizing that the stray she had just sneered at was the wealthiest philanthropist in the state, the man whose validation my mother craved more than oxygen. Dr. Henley turned his back to the gate, offering me his arm. "Shall we go back inside, Jules? I believe there's a toast being made in your honor." I looked at my mother one last time. She looked small, defeated, and utterly uninvited. "Yes," I said, taking his arm. "Let's go." Walking away from them was the hardest thing I'd ever done, right until the moment I actually did it. Then it became the easiest. Behind me, the chaos erupted. The dignified facade my mother had maintained for decades shattered completely. "Dr. Henley, wait, please, there's been a misunderstanding." Her voice was desperate, stripped of all its usual haughty polish. She sounded like what she was, a social climber losing her grip on the ladder. She's very emotional. She doesn't mean it." Marcy joined in, her voice rising to that piercing pitch she used when she wanted to play the victim. "Jules, how can you do this to me? He was going to propose. You're ruining my life." I paused for a fraction of a second. The old reflex, the one conditioned by years of guilt trips, flared up. I almost turned around. I almost apologized. But then I felt Dr. Henley's hand gently pat my arm. "Don't look back," he said softly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "You can't see the view if you're staring at the wreckage." He was right. I kept walking. "Jules!" My dad's voice was the last thing I heard, sad and resigned. "Just let us in." "Close the gate, Marcus," I said into my headset. "With pleasure." "Boss," Marcus replied. The heavy iron gates began to hum, sliding shut with a finality that vibrated through the soles of my feet. The screaming was cut off as the heavy oak front doors of the mansion closed behind us, sealing out the cold, the rain, and the toxicity. The silence in the foyer lasted only a second before the warm hum of the party washed over me again. The jazz music, the clinking of silverware, the roar of 300 conversations. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of roasting turkey and cinnamon, not guilt. "Are you all right?" Dr. Henley asked, releasing my arm. I looked at him, surprised to find a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "I think I think that's the first time I've ever breathed with my own lungs. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." He nodded. We walked back into the great room. The mood hadn't dampened. If anything, it had grown warmer. People were passing dishes, swapping stories, and laughing with the ease of old friends. Arthur, the widower, was sitting with the group of queer college students, teaching them a card game. Chloe was helping a young mom cut up turkey for her toddler. It was a chaotic, beautiful mess of humanity. Someone tapped a spoon against a glass. It was a young woman I didn't know, standing on a chair near the center of the room. She looked nervous, but determined. "Hey, everyone," she called out. The room quieted down. I wanted to say something. I'm a nurse. I worked a double shift last night, and I was going to go home to an empty apartment and sleep through the holiday because my family is on the other side of the country. But then I saw a post online. She looked directly at me. I didn't know if it was real, but I came anyway, and looking around this room, seeing all of you, this is the best Thanksgiving I've ever had. So to Jules, thank you for not closing your door when the world closed theirs on you. 300 people raised their glasses. To Jules! The chorus rang out, shaking the rafters. I stood there, surrounded by strangers who treated me better than my own blood, and let the tears finally fall. They weren't tears of sadness this time. They were tears of relief. I had lost a family tonight, yes, but I had found a village. My phone vibrated against my hip like a trapped insect, relentless and angry. I ignored it for an hour, choosing instead to eat pumpkin pie with a group of retired teachers who were debating the best Jane Austen adaptation. But eventually, curiosity and a morbid desire to see the wreckage won out. I stepped into the quiet of the hallway and pulled out my phone. 47 missed calls, 63 text messages. The notifications were a scrolling wall of vitriol. Marcy, I hope you rot in that big empty house. Tyler didn't propose because he was too upset. You stole my moment. I hate you. Mom, after everything we've done for you, you are ungrateful, selfish, and cruel. Don't expect a Christmas invite. Dad, we're going to Denny's. I hope you're happy. I felt a twinge of guilt at the Denny's text, but then I remembered the thumbs up emoji. The guilt evaporated. Then a message came through from Aunt Karen. No text, just an image. I opened it. It was a candid shot taken under the harsh fluorescent lights of a diner booth. My mother was sitting with her arms crossed, staring at a plate of limp fries. Marcy was crying into a napkin, her mascara running in dark streaks. Tyler, the boyfriend of 3 weeks, was looking at his phone, clearly wishing he was literally anywhere else. My dad looked like he was contemplating the physics of melting into the vinyl booth. The table was cluttered with plastic menus and half-eaten burgers. It was silent. It was awkward. It was the immediate family gathering they had fought so hard for. I saved the photo, not to be petty, but as a reminder. That was the table I had spent my life trying to earn a seat at, and looking at it now, I realized I hadn't been missing anything. Bad news? I looked up to see Dr. Henley standing in the doorway, a glass of wine in his hand. No, I said, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Just closure. He nodded, respecting the boundary. I wanted to speak with you before I left, Jules, about what I said earlier outside. About my mother's grant? I asked, wincing slightly. Look, I'm sorry about how she spoke to you. She's lot. I'm not interested in your mother's grant, he said, waving a hand dismissively. I'm interested in you. I blinked. Me? I've been looking for a project director for the Foundation's new community outreach initiative, he said. We have the funds, but we lack the pulse. We lack someone who understands that community isn't just a buzzword for a grant proposal. Tonight you mobilized 300 people, fed them, housed them, and created a sense of belonging in less than 48 hours. That's not just hosting, Jules. That's leadership. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock. "Call my office on Monday," he said. "I think we can do some good work together, and unlike your current situation, I promise we appreciate talent when we see it." I took the card, my fingers brushing the embossed lettering. My startup had just sold, leaving me wealthy but unemployed. I had been wondering what to do with the rest of my life. "I'll call you," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "Good," he said. "Happy Thanksgiving, Jules." He walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway. I looked at the business card, then back at the door to the great room where the laughter was still roaring. My family was miserable at a diner. I was standing in a mansion, holding a job offer from a billionaire surrounded by new friends. Karma hadn't just knocked. She'd kicked the door down and brought dessert. The last taillights faded down the driveway around 1:30 a.m. It was Chloe, the young woman who had been sleeping in her car. I had insisted she take one of the guest suites for the night, and for as long as she needed until she got back on her feet. But she had declined, saying she had a friend in Seattle she could finally afford to drive to with the gas money Arthur had slipped into her pocket. "You saved me tonight," she had whispered at the door, her eyes shining. "No," I told her, squeezing her hand. "We saved each other." The heavy oak door clicked shut, sealing the house against the night. The caterers had packed up hours ago, leaving the kitchen spotless, though the scent of cinnamon and roasted sage still lingered in the air like a pleasant ghost. I walked through the great room, turning off the lights one by one. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of silence than the one that had greeted me 3 days ago. That silence had been hollow, echoing with loneliness. This silence felt full. It felt like a deep breath after a long run. The walls had absorbed the laughter, the stories, and the warmth of 300 people. My home had been christened, not with champagne, but with genuine gratitude. I collapsed onto the white sectional sofa, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. My feet throbbed in a good way, and my heart felt strangely light, unburdened by the heavy stone of rejection I'd been carrying for years. I reached for my phone on the coffee table. The barrage of notifications had stopped. I opened Instagram out of habit. I went to search for Marcy's profile to see if she had posted any tragic updates about her ruined night. User not found. I frowned and checked Facebook. Content not available. Even on TikTok. Marcy had blocked me. On everything. She had scrubbed me from her digital existence, likely spinning a narrative to her friends that I was the villain who destroyed her engagement. I let out a short, dry laugh. It was the most Marcy thing she could possibly do. She couldn't control me, so she deleted me. I checked my messages with my mother. The last text was still the one about Denny's. There was no apology. No, "I love you." No, "let's fix this." I knew her playbook better than I knew my own tax returns. She was currently sitting in her house, seething, waiting for me to cool off. She expected me to call tomorrow, crying, begging for forgiveness for my outburst, ready to pay for a lavish Christmas to make up for it. She would be waiting a long time. I set the phone down, face down. The bridge wasn't just burned. I had demolished the foundation and salted the earth. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark silhouette of the fir trees against the night sky. I had lost the family I was born into. I knew the grief would come later, the mourning for the parents I wished I had rather than the ones I actually got. But for tonight I felt powerful. I turned off the last lamp and headed up the floating staircase to my master suite. I had a meeting with a billionaire on Monday. I had a house full of leftovers. And for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't waiting for an invitation to my own life. I was finally free. Or so I thought. The morning after Thanksgiving was usually a hangover of regret. Sugar crashes, emotional bruising, and the dread of apologizing for things I hadn't done. But as sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my bedroom, painting stripes of gold across the duvet, I felt something entirely different. I felt clean. I made a pot of coffee in my pristine, quiet kitchen. The house was still settling, the timbers groaning softly in the morning chill. I took my mug and walked out onto the front porch. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a brilliant, scrubbed blue. I decided to walk down the driveway to grab the mail. It was a long walk, a luxury I still wasn't used to. As I crunched over the gravel, I thought about Dr. Henley's offer. A project director. It was exactly the kind of challenge I needed. My family had tried to bury me, but they had only planted me in better soil. I reached the large black security mailbox at the end of the drive. I unlocked it, expecting it to be empty since I hadn't updated my address with anyone but the bank. Inside, there was a single white envelope. It had no stamp, no return address, no postmark. It had been hand-delivered. A prickle of unease danced down my spine. I tore the flap open. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, the kind ripped from a spiral-bound book. The handwriting was jagged, hurried, written in blue ballpoint pen. I read the words, and the steam from my coffee seemed to freeze in the air. This wasn't about Thanksgiving. Ask your dad what he did in 2011. I stared at the paper. 2011. I did the math quickly. I was a sophomore in college. My dad was working as a regional manager for a shipping company. It was a normal year, boring even, or so I had thought. I flipped the paper over. Nothing. I looked up at the street. It was empty. Just the quiet suburban road winding through the trees. Who had left this? One of the guests? A neighbor? Or someone who knew exactly why my family had been trying so desperately to keep me small, keep me quiet, and keep me away from the spotlight? My heart hammered against my ribs, but strangely, my hands were steady. Yesterday, this note would have terrified me. Yesterday, I was the daughter begging for a seat at the table, desperate for approval, terrified of rocking the boat. But the woman standing in the driveway today was different. I was the owner of this estate. I was a woman with resources, with a billionaire ally, and with a spine forged in the fire of rejection. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. My family thought they could ghost me. They thought they could block me and rewrite history. But they had made a fatal error. They had uninvited the one person who knew how to dig for the truth. I took a sip of my coffee, the bitterness sharp and grounding. I looked back at my house, my fortress. 2011, I whispered to the wind. I turned back toward the mansion, a determined smile curving my lips. My family drama wasn't over. In fact, the real story was just beginning. And this time, I held the pen.